I'm Ted, and there's this new girl in the neighborhood who's caught my eye. Rose is her name, and she's not your typical neighbor. See, our area is all about family life, with kids running around and the quiet hum of suburban living. But Rose stands out. She's single, gorgeous, and she just moved in. My wife, Isabel, thought it'd be nice to welcome her with some homemade muffins. So, one Sunday morning, we headed over to her place, armed with our baked goods. Rose was lovely, gracious even. She explained she's a yoga teacher who moved here for work. We chatted, and she offered Isabel a free trial yoga class, which she happily accepted. Seemed like a normal neighborly interaction, you know? Isabel dove headfirst into the yoga classes, loving every minute of it. Me? Not so much. I prefer something a bit more active, like tennis or horse riding. So after the trial, I bowed out. But as the weeks went by, I couldn't shake this feeling of unease. You see, every night there'd be a parade of different cars pulling up to Rose's place. At first, I figured they were just her dates or friends. But it got weird when I noticed it wasn't the same cars, and sometimes there'd be multiple vehicles. It didn't add up. So one evening, while Isabel was out for some work thing, I decided to do a bit of snooping. I pretended to take a casual stroll around the block, but ended up lingering near Rose's house. The night was thick with shadows, and the street felt eerily quiet. But something drew me closer to Rose's door, a nagging curiosity that I couldn't shake off. I crept up to one of the windows, hoping to catch a glimpse of what was going on inside. What I saw sent chills down my spine. There was Rose in the center of a circle, surrounded by people. Candles flickered, casting eerie shadows across the room. Rose wore a black robe, holding a jar filled with some red liquid. She was murmuring something in a strange language, like some sort of spell. The others in the circle seemed entranced, swaying to the rhythm of her words. Then I saw them, familiar faces from the neighborhood, the guy from yoga class, the barista from the coffee shop, and then, to my horror, I saw Isabel among them. My heart skipped a beat. Why was she here? As Rose took a sip from the jar, passing it around, everyone drank eagerly. It was like some twisted ritual, lasting for what felt like an eternity. I knew I had to get out of there before I was caught. Back home, I tried to make sense of what I'd seen. Why was Isabel involved in this strange gathering? Should I confront her about it, or pretend I didn't know? And what was in that red liquid? When Isabel returned home, I tried to act normal, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. She looked different, more vibrant, younger even. Maybe it was just the yoga classes, I told myself. But as the days passed, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Isabel attended these gatherings twice a month, and each time she seemed more radiant than before. It got me thinking. Maybe it wasn't just the yoga. Maybe that red liquid held the key to her newfound beauty. But was it worth it? If it made Isabel happy, should I just let it go? After all, who wouldn't want a beautiful wife? And I couldn't deny the satisfaction of seeing others envy her. Maybe I should even join them one day. I had this gut feeling that something was seriously off with my neighbor. It all went down a couple of weeks back, just one average Wednesday night. I was taking out the trash after dinner, minding my own business, when I heard this woman's cry from across the street. I looked over and there was Nick and Susie from the house next door. But something was wrong. Nick had his hands around Susie's neck, like he was trying to choke her. It happened so fast, like a scene from a horror movie, and then they just vanished from the window. I couldn't tell if it was real or some messed up illusion. I stood there, frozen, not sure what to do. Should I knock on their door? Call the cops? But I barely knew Nick and Susie, and I didn't want to come off as nosy, so I decided to play it cool and knock on their door, just to see if everything was okay. Nick answered the door, looking as normal as ever. I tried to act casual, telling him I needed to borrow some eggs, but of course he said they were out. I tried to peek inside, but it was too dark to see anything. Feeling uneasy, I went back home, but I couldn't shake the disturbing image from my mind. In the days that followed, I kept an eye on Nick's house. Everything seemed normal on the surface. Nick went to work, came home, rinse, repeat. But Susie was nowhere to be seen. Was she okay? Sick? Or worse? I tried to ask Nick about her, playing it off like I was just making conversation, but he looked at me like I was nuts and dodged the question. The more I watched, the more convinced I became that something sinister was going on. I toyed with the idea of calling the cops, but I didn't have any solid proof, so I took matters into my own hands and decided to snoop around their house while Nick was at work. It was a risky move, but I had to know the truth. One day, after making sure Nick's car was nowhere in sight, I made my move. With a set of tools in hand, I quietly slipped into his house through the back door. My heart was pounding as I made my way to the kitchen, the scene of the supposed crime. Unsurprisingly, there was nothing to be found. Nick must have cleaned up any evidence. Determined not to give up, I crept upstairs to their bedroom. It was quiet as I searched, but nothing seemed out of the ordinary. That is, until I found them. Stained towels and clothes hidden under the bed, the telltale signs of dried blood. "Got you," I whispered triumphantly to myself. I was about to dig deeper into my investigation when I heard the sound of Nick's car pulling into the driveway. Panic set in as I realized he was home early. I hastily shoved the incriminating evidence back under the bed and slipped out the back door, my heart racing with adrenaline. In the days that followed, I couldn't shake the feeling of dread that consumed me. I tried to confide in someone, anyone, but people looked at me like I was crazy. As each day passed, the tension only grew, leaving me to wonder what horrors lay ahead. But the more I dwelled on it, the more absurd my suspicions seemed. Nick and Susie were the epitome of the perfect couple, always smiling, always laughing. There was no way Nick could have harmed Susie. It just didn't make sense. Then, like a bolt from the blue, it hit me. Susie hadn't been taken by Nick's hands. She'd been lost to us all in a tragic car accident years ago, a wound that had never fully healed for Nick. The realization washed over me like a wave, chilling me to the bone. The cries I'd heard, the blood-stained towels, they were all figments of my own twisted imagination. I'd conjured up this elaborate narrative of murder where there was none, a ghost story spun from the threads of my own guilt and paranoia. As I tried to piece together the shattered fragments of my reality, the memories of that fateful night came flooding back. It was late, and I was driving home alone, lost in my thoughts. And then, suddenly, she appeared out of nowhere, standing right in the middle of the road. I slammed on the brakes, but it was too late. The impact was inevitable. Stepping out of the car, I approached the figure lying on the ground, my heart racing. As I looked down, I recognized her instantly. It was Susie. Blood pooled around her lifeless body, staining the asphalt. Panic gripped me as I contemplated my next move. Dialing 911 seemed like the right thing to do, but fear paralyzed me. What if they thought I was drunk? I had only had a few glasses of wine at dinner, but would they believe me? With a sinking feeling in my gut, I made the decision to flee the scene. Guilt gnawed at me, a relentless reminder of what I had done. But it wasn't until later that the truth hit me like a ton of bricks. Nick wasn't the one responsible for Susie's death. It was me. I had killed her years ago and buried the truth deep within me. Haunted by my own demons, I couldn't shake the feeling that something sinister lurked in the shadows, watching and waiting. And though I tried to bury the past, I knew deep down that the darkness would always find me, a constant reminder of the horrors I had unleashed.